Hi everyone, welcome to your Legacy Cockapoos puppy orientation. For those of you who do not know me yet, my name is Jessica Sampson and I am the owner and founder of Legacy Cockapoos. The first thing we're going to dive into is your contract. I really want to highlight that you should be reading this through thoroughly, okay? Pre-read it before you come to sign it so you have a deeper understanding of our requirements. It is on our website. We do believe in being fully transparent so that you can actually read this through before you place a deposit so you know what you're agreeing to. Some things I want to highlight that are really important to keep your warranty in effect is spay and neuter. So all our puppies, unless they're sold with breeding rights, which is a completely separate contract, must be spayed or neutered. Mini size cockapoos must be spayed or neutered by no sooner, and I'm stressing this, no sooner than 9 months of age, please. Somewhere between 9 to 12 months of age, and you must email me a copy of either a veterinary certificate, spay or neuter certificate signed by your vet, or a paid receipt for the spay or neuter that it has been completed. A quote from your vet is not proof that the spay or neuter has been completed. It is important that you send this to me because if you do not, your health and genetic guarantee part of the contract will become null and void. So for our standard size puppies, spay or neuter, because they have a longer growing period and they don't mature as fast as our mini size pups, they cannot be spayed or neutered until after 12 months of age, and you want to do it no later than 18 months of age. So it's a year to a year and a half, and then official notification that the spay or neuter has been complete, just like with the minis, must be sent to me no later than 19 months of age to keep your warranty in effect. There are some other things in your contract that could void your warranty, which is why I want to highlight those as well right now. Certain types of food are not okay to feed your dogs. I have a lot of reasons for this, and I will explain to you later as to why we prefer the diets that we do, and why and those reasons will be why it would affect your warranty, okay? Also, certain preventative medications are listed on our contract, and if you give those to your cockapoo, it will void your warranty. They have been there has been known cases at an alarming rate of a lot of preventative medications that are currently on the market that kill the Lyme-carrying ticks, that actually cause severe neurological issues and sometimes death. So if you give those products, it will void your warranty because we cannot guarantee if you're putting something on your animal that could potentially be life-threatening. All right. So, with your puppy, so this is your puppy packet. You'll get one of these. This is all your paperwork basically. And in your puppy packet, you'll get a lot of informational sheets. You'll also get a pamphlet from us that basically tells you a lot of the information, feeding instructions, bathing, some training tips, that sort of thing that I am going to cover in this video, but also a lot of it's written down for you in this pamphlet. And then you also get coupons. So we've actually partnered with a few companies. So Bold by Nature Mega, sorry, they used to be called Mega Dog Raw, they rebranded, is sending you home with a coupon for $10 off your first round of food. And then Shades of Grey, who actually was one of our previous guardians. Carrie and her family are absolutely lovely people, Canadian family, and they support local Canadian business. So they have a dog treat company that is simple, pure proteins, and they are 100% organic, and they are all locally sourced. So they don't source from the US. They try to support local farmers, and they're sourced out of Campbell Ford, Ontario. Carrie and her family at Shades of Grey are giving you 30% off for a full year to welcome your new legacy puppy to your family, which is a very generous welcome package. We also have here for our probiotics, this will come in your puppy packet. This is has a wholesale code here. It is a permanent wholesale code that you can use over and over again, and it's only for our legacy family. So please don't pass it around, but it is for my clients specifically, and it gives you 40% off permanently every time you order the probiotics for our puppies, which we strongly recommend. All right, then with all our puppies, we do send you home with an official pedigree. Shows their lineage. This is really important. So there's a lot of breeders in Canada that actually will not provide this for you. And we do, we've been breeding Cockapoos since 1998. And we have always traced our lineage and our lines. We do believe that's very important to prevent inbreeding. And the whole goal to breeding the Cockapoo is to breed a dog breed differently than they created the other breeds. And the way they created the other breeds was through a lot of inbreeding, line breeding, and a lot of breeds stem from only 200 original dogs. And then all those other dogs that come from that are all directly related. That's how they reinforce traits and everything. It can be done without a level of that high level of inbreeding. It just takes longer, and that's what we're hoping to accomplish with the Cockapoo. I do breed with purpose, and I do breed towards making them an official breed one day. And so with that, we need to track lines. It also shows that it shows each breed, registration numbers, all that kind of stuff going back. This is important too because there's a lot of people out there that say they breed Cockapoos, but they just buy one of the parents maybe have poodle in it, but it may also have some Yorkie and some Schnauzer and some Bichon. It's not a true representation of a Cockapoo that in looks or temperament or structure. So we really like to keep track of this. We like to make sure our dogs are in fact what we're saying they are, and we only use Cocker and Poodle lineage in our dogs. So that goes home to each and every one of our puppies. We also send home their official Vollard temperament test results. Now these are posted ahead of time before selection to help you select on our website, but we like to send each puppy's results home so you can see those and have them with you, for future reference. As well, in our puppy packet, let me just get this out here. We send you home with genetic testing results, copies of the parents' genetic testing results, and OFA results. So this one's Avalanche, which is the sire, and this one's Rhea, which is, although it says Lily on here, but her registered name is Legacy Cockapoos, Lotuses, and Lilies, and then her call name's Rhea. But so these are both their genetic results. And then the OFA results as well. OFA results look like this. It's a different color for each thing. So on our large breed dogs, we do OFAs for hips, patellas, and elbows. And for our small breed dogs, just hips and patellas, because elbows aren't really an issue with small breed dogs normally. Really, hips aren't either, but we do like to just make sure. Basically, anything above a fair on hips and above is considered a pass, but we do prefer, if we have a dog with a fair rating, we do prefer to breed them to a good or excellent, so an above score, to help reinforce healthy hips. In no way does it mean that they have hip dysplasia or are more prone to hip dysplasia because they have a fair rating. Okay, that is important to note. So there. Oh, and in here I did want to highlight in their genetic testing. So generally with genetic testing, there will be an explanation how to read these results in the copy of the genetic testing. But in the genetic testing, generally with genetic testing, one copy of something means they're a carrier, but they're not affected by it. 2 copies means they're affected by it. 2 copies generally we try to avoid. It's perfectly acceptable to breed a carrier as long as you're breeding it to a dog that is all clear for that genetic disease. So what that means is a certain percentage of their puppies will carry the gene, but they will not, none of them will be affected. So that ensures healthy breeding. The reason why we still breed carriers and not all clears, what happens is it actually significantly reduces the genetic gene pool and creates a genetic bottleneck. And we've seen this before in other breeds. The standard poodle was almost completely obliterated because they tried to outbreed a particular genetic component in the breed, so much so that the dogs became so inbred that new horrific things started popping up. And it took a while to really get the diversity back. They started outcrossing to mini poodles to bring genetic diversity back to the standard poodle. So that's an example of why we would not want to eliminate all carriers, okay? Because we can breed safely without the dogs being affected through genetic testing and pair them accordingly. Now that I've explained that, I do want to highlight an exception to the rule. So on the testing results, you are going to find on all my dogs, actually, here it'll say invertebral disc disease, also known as IVDD, or chondrodystrophy, known as CDDY. You will notice it's in red here, over here, right here. It's in red here. This particular dog carries 2 copies of the gene. Under normal circumstances, that would mean that the dog is affected. What this actually means in this particular test. There are certain breeds that don't exist without this gene. This gene actually causes the structure of the dog. Breeds that would have this gene, Dachshunds, West Highland Terriers, Bichons, those sorts of breeds. Cocker Spaniels are amongst them, and so is about 80% of poodles, mini and 90% of toy poodles actually. But standard poodles don't generally have this gene. It's responsible in the poodles for their smaller structure. So it's important to know. People get really worried when they hear invertebrate disc disease. So yes, any dog breed that has shorter legs and a longer body structure is known to have a higher rate of spinal issues, disc disease. But this particular gene does not mean your dog, because they have it, even if they have 2 copies or 1 copy, it does not mean they will have disc disease. What it means is they have a 15 to 20% higher chance of developing it than a breed that has no copies. So a dog that has 0 copies actually can still develop disc disease. But they have a lower chance of developing it than a dog that has copies of the IVDD gene. It in no way means your dog will get IVDD. And so I've been breeding cockapoos for about a little over 25 years now. And in that time, and all my dogs have either 1 or 2 copies of IVDD, because 80% of mini poodles, 90% of toy poodles carry the gene, and at least 1 copy of the gene, maybe 2, and all Cocker Spaniels carry 2 copies of the gene. The Cocker Spaniel structure, the Cocker Spaniel doesn't exist the way it does today without the gene. This is why it's in our dogs. And in all my years of breeding, I have never had a symptomatic case of IVDD. So it lets you know how common it is. But it is something that you want to be aware of. Because certainly certain environmental factors can increase your risk of IVDD. And these same environmental factors can increase the risk of luxating patella, which is very common in small breed dogs, and hip dysplasia. So what we want to do is follow a regimen, and unfortunately, for our small breed dogs, it means, our minis means no stairs whatsoever for the first 6 months of life. Generally, I mean, they can do 1 or 2 in and out of the house, but no flight of stairs up and down. Like if you, puppies like to follow their owners places, and we underestimate how much they follow us. So we go up and down the stairs in our homes several times a day, and we don't realize how many times we've done it. Doing stairs, because puppies' body is rapidly developing, and when their bones are rapidly growing, their tendons and their muscles are very loose to allow for that rapid growth. Until that rapid growth happens, those muscles don't tighten up. So what it means is when they're rapidly growing, their joints are not properly supported by their tendons and their muscles. And until those have tightened again, when they're finished growing or have tightened, they are at risk of developing hip dysplasia, luxating patella, or vertebrae disc disease, because everything is very movable, and they could damage the joint, damage the joints in the knees, in the hips, or in the spine. So once your mini-sized pups are over 6 months of age, you can start to allow them to do a bit of stairs. For our large breed dogs, and it is really imperative, unfortunately they are big, and it's inconvenient, but it's 12 months. And it's really important that you follow these protocols. Also, do not over confine them to the crate. That also helps contribute to hip dysplasia. The other big thing that people fail to realize is puppies are quite rambunctious, and they do silly, goofy things, and we think it's adorable, and it is. But if you have a puppy that's really tearing it up around the yard, they dart all over the place, really excitable, the zoomies are healthy. The zoomies are healthy, but how they're doing the zoomies matters. Okay? If they're jumping up and twisting and landing to catch something in the air, or if they're constantly twisting their whole spine as they're changing direction in the yard at a high rate, these things can actually cause damage to the hips, the knees, and the spine, and can heighten your risk of them developing invertebrate disc disease, hip dysplasia, or luxating patella. And it has no bearing on breed. This is true for all breeds. Okay, so we want to limit that until they're done the bulk of their growing, which is really the jumping up and twisting. For our minis is 6 to 9 months, and for our large breed it's 12 to 18 months. All right, and then as far as exercise goes with our pups, they don't need a ton of exercise early on. 5-10 minutes here or there. Playtime is far more than adequate. They sleep a lot, and then they get up and they burn a lot of calories quickly. When they're adults, our cockapoos, generally 30 to 45 minute walk once or twice a day is adequate, or a throw the ball for 20 minutes gives them a lot of exercise quickly. Also, if you are a jogger, it doesn't matter what size the dog that is, until they are done their growing, generally a year to a year and a half, you cannot start running with them. You will put too much stress on their joints, and again, heighten the risk of hip dysplasia, luxating patella, and vertebrae disc disease. So we want to make sure they're totally done growing before you start that, and then you slowly work them up. You don't just take them out on a 5 or 10K run, just boom. You have to work up to it very slowly, and it's going to take you probably a month at least or more to get them to where you want to. So you'll have to take them on a run shorter than you normally do, and then go out and finish afterwards. But that's the way it has to be done for their safety and their health overall. We also send you home. The pups, they go home with 6 weeks free pet insurance with Pet Secure. We don't get kickbacks from these guys, but it's a wonderful thing that they offer free for our pet owners. So they offer you 6 weeks free pet insurance that will cover up to $750 for accident or illness. And do I like pet insurance? Absolutely, I like pet insurance. The reason being, emergencies will happen. For most people, emergencies happen at some point, an accident or a virus you weren't expecting. And I personally have never walked away from an emergency for less than thousands. Anywhere between 1 to 5,000 is not unheard of. If you need emergency surgery, it could be 10 to 30,000, to be honest. Depends what they're in there for. So unless you are really good at keeping a rainy day fund, a substantial rainy day fund, which is what us breeders actually have to do because pet insurance isn't offered to breeders, and not touching it. You can't touch the fund. It always has to be there. I do recommend pet insurance. You just pay your monthly fee and then you're covered. But I do recommend that your coverage covers for at least $5,000, because anything less to that, to me, in my mind, is a waste of your time and money, because emergencies are generally they're generally in the thousands. What I like about PetSecure is it's $5,000 per incident, not per year. Some companies will cover a certain amount per year. And that's fine and dandy, but usually their coverage is lower because they actually aren't covering you for as much. So it's going to be a combined coverage, right? Now, there's many different coverages that you can look at. And there's many great companies out there. I encourage you to read the fine print in all of them, because not all of them are equal and not all of them offer the same thing. What I like about PetSecure, the other one that you will see at a lot of the vets, is Trupanion, and Trupanion's great too. But what I do like about PetSecure, and that you should be aware of, is PetSecure covers the vet visit when you go in. Trupanion does not. So when you walk into the door, whatever your vet's consult fee is walking in the door, when you are with Trupanion, you will be paying that every single time, and then they're only going to compensate you for the care after that point. PetSecure is going to cover that for you, plus compensate you for the vet care that's given. The other thing that I also really like is insurance companies, always, as your animal gets older, your premium will go up a bit. But what I like about PetSecure is that what doesn't go up, and most companies how this go up, is the deductible. So a lot of companies, their deductible goes up, and so does their premium go up the older the animal you get. The older the animal is, and the older the animal is, the more likely they are to draw on their insurance, which is why they're doing that. What I like about PetSecure is that your deductible does not go up. So the same deductible you have as a puppy will be the same deductible you have as an adult, which saves you even more money. So I do like that about them. And I strongly suggest that you recommend that you look into pet insurance. I do not get any kickbacks from insurance whatsoever. And then do your due diligence, read the fine print, because find out what they actually cover, what they actually don't, because some of them cover stuff and some of them in the fine print, they don't actually cover much, and which is very unfortunate when you need it and you didn't understand that. So do understand the fine print in your insurance company that you choose, if you choose to go with an insurance company. Okay. The other thing that we have is registration. All our puppies come with prepaid registration to the American Cockapoo Club. It doesn't cost you a thing. You will be given a form, which I forgot to bring down. I'll show it to you at the end. But on the form, there's a litter registration number, and then you will notice a series of numbers right after that. There will be a number circled for you on the registration form, and it's very important that when you register your puppy, that the number circled is the one that you put down. Because if you choose a different number and it goes through, then the person who was assigned that number for their puppy to register their puppy will no longer be able to register their puppy. All right, so it's really important that you choose the number that's on there. I will have already filled out all the pertinent information for you on the form, color, but registration name, you get to pick, which is always fun. But it must say Legacy Cockapoos in front of it, which identifies the kennel at which bred the dog. And then after that, you can get as creative or non-creative as you want. An example I want to leave you with is we've had quite a few Baileys. It's a very popular name for apricots. So if you named it Legacy Cockapoos Bailey, as simple as that, it might not go through depending on how creative my past owners were. So you might have to get creative and call it Legacy Cockapoos Bailey's Irish Cream or something like that, right? You just get creative with it, have fun with it. It's just a registered name. It's not their call name. And then you can call, I mean, you don't even have to make the registered name associated with their call name. I do try to do that as much as possible with my breeding dogs, just so there's not any confusion. But I do have the odd one that their registered name has nothing to do with their call name. Because when they went home to their guardians preferred a different name, and I try to accommodate my guardians as much as I possibly can, because it is going to be their dog for life after they leave us. So yes, you can go online for your registration. We'll give you the form, but it's totally free, and once you fill it out, they will send you out your American Cockapoo Club registration certificate for your puppy. Okay, that's your official registration for your dog. And yes, you can register Cockapoos with the American Cockapoo Club, because we are working towards making them an official breed. So there is a point and a purpose to it. And there is a point and a purpose to every breeding that we do. There's a lot of thought that goes behind every breeding that we do. We don't just match two dogs and go, okay, we got puppies, everybody let's sell them. No, we're always looking to better our lines. We're always looking for the next generation moving forward towards making them a registered breed. So there's always purpose behind it, and we always try to pick the best representation. Sometimes there isn't a puppy in that litter that we think is the best representation. And that's the way it happens. But we do try, and genetics don't always line up exactly how we want, but it's trial and error, and we try to learn from our past and apply that to the future to have a better outcome. From here, we're going to move on to potty training and crate training. Your puppy has been fully pee-pad trained while they're here. Generally, our pups are 99 to 100% when they're heading home. In the wintertime, they don't get a lot of outdoor exposure unless it's a really nice day, because young puppies have a hard time controlling their body temp. So until they're around 7-8 weeks, we can't even start outdoor introductions. So we start potty training at 3 weeks. We have a really good success rate. By 4 weeks, they're like pretty proficient at going on their pee pads regularly. And then if we have summer litters, when we have our summer litters, we do try to expose them to outdoors and get a real good start on outdoor potty training with you as much as possible. We also start positive introduction to the crate. And if they're here with us after 8 weeks of age, we do start overnight crate training. So during the day up to there, we feed them, we give them treats. When we're cleaning the pen, we make it a positive thing so that they want to go in the crate. Most of our puppies, when we clean the pen, they immediately wander into their crates because they know it's treat time. And we want to leave positive reinforcement behind the crate. The crate is a safe place for them, and we want to keep it that way. So crate can never be used as a punishment tool. You should never use it if your puppy's being very hyper and out of control. That actually means they need some more exercise and to vent that energy. You're better off to let them out in the backyard and let them do a few laps around the yard than put them back in the crate, because that's actually going to make the problem worse, okay? And when a dog has a lot of pent-up energy, they get very nippy. So they're not being nasty, they're not being aggressive, but they do get very nippy because they're trying to vent that energy somehow. So you need to allow them to vent it in healthier ways so that they're calm, cooled, and collected in the house which is better for everybody's peace. Okay, so potty training. Your puppies need to go out every hour on the hour. Okay, so set your watch, set your timer. When you're home, it's every hour on the hour. The more you're able to do this, the faster they're going to potty train. As they are not having any accents. So they are pee-pad trained. So we recommend that you keep with the pee-pad training. It's something they're familiar with. If you're not familiar with pee-pads, it's essentially like a very flat disposable diaper. It has a plastic protective coating on the outside on the back to protect your floors. And then it has a membrane inside that grabs a hold of the moisture and locks it in. A lot of them have attractants on them to make the puppies want to pee on them. But we introduced them to that. So I strongly recommend that you place your pee pad near or in front of the door, which you will be taking them outside. That way, it's a really good indication that they need to go to the bathroom. And if you see them heading that way, just keep going and going outside, okay? Because we do want to start that outdoor potty training right away. But as we work on every hour on the hour and they're not having any accidents whatsoever when you're taking them outside, then this means now you can extend it to an hour and a half, then 2 hours, then 3 hours, then 4 hours. Once you get up to 3 or 4 hours at a time, your puppy is fully good to go, okay? And that's how it has to be done. If you live in a condo, a dog-friendly condo where there's a lot of other dogs, unfortunately what this does mean for you, for the protection of your puppy, is until your puppy is fully vaccinated, you cannot take them out to the community dog area, potty area. It's an extremely high risk for parvovirus. So you're just going to, maybe if you have a balcony, where you can put something down, some AstroTurf, or some people actually get grass brought in and out every month. There's services that do that, or utilize the pee pads until their vaccines are done. And then you can start with the outside training because it's really a safety issue for them to go to community places like that are extremely high risk. Condos tend to be a hotbed for parvovirus. So it's really important that you keep them inside. As far as crate training, everybody has a different way of crate training their puppies, and there are some good ones, there are some bad ones. Some people have a lot of success with one method over another, and the method that has worked the best for my dogs is basically you got to take your heart, put it in a box, lock it up, throw that key away, because your worst enemy is your my baby needs me. That's really going to cause problems for you. And crate training and how fast you do crate training. The reasons why I recommend crate training is, one, it speeds up potty training because they learn to gain bowel and bladder control quicker. It also creates a safe space for your puppy when you have to go out. So when they're in the crate, you know they're good, they're safe, they're not getting lodged behind something, chewing wires, or jumping up on things and getting caught. I've heard of puppies that crawled over puppy pens and their leg went in a certain way and they're dangling and smashed their leg, and who knows how long they've been dangling there. So crates are very, very safe. And I would recommend that you do that. Also, things that people don't think of that are really important for a dog to be comfortable in a crate for is if they're staying at the vet, like for their spay or neuter. They will be put in a crate when they're at the vet if they're staying there for any length of time, as well as your groomer. So we want the dogs to be comfortable, confident, and not be stressing, because I was a groomer for years, and I had many clients that did not like the crate, and they would stress, they would drool everywhere, and often they would have diarrhea. And that is a groomer's nightmare when you've just cleaned and groomed this dog and you've put it in the crate so you can work on your other dogs while you're waiting for the owner to show up. And now they've pooped everywhere. And it's not pleasant for the dog. They're under stress and they're not enjoying it. And you want the grooming to be an enjoyable experience. So crate training gets them prepared for that. And also when you travel, they always have a safe, comfortable place that's familiar to them. So it helps reduce the stress when you're visiting friends or family, or if you have to have a dog sitter, they have their crate, or you're boarding, they have their crate. You can take that. That's a familiar space to them. So for all those reasons, I strongly recommend crate training. Generally, our mini-sized dogs fit in, I would say, get a crate that's suitable for a Cocker Spaniel around 25, 30 pounds, ideally. And then for our standard size would be 30 pounds plus, usually in that 30 to 50 pound range is where we're looking for. You want a crate that comes with a wire divider that can grow with your puppy. That would be the best bang for your buck. Otherwise, if you buy the plastic crates, which are actually more safe long-term than the wire crates, what happens is you're going to have to rebuy those crates several times, and that's a huge, huge investment. So I would recommend the wire crate. And the reason why I say they're slightly safer is sometimes I had a client that had a rough collie years ago when I was grooming, and the dog was sleeping in their wire crate, and when they were sleeping, they had stretched out and put its paw through the wire crate. And he got so excited when his owner came home, he jumped up really quick and caused a spiral fracture on his arm, on his leg. And for that reason, they could be a little less unsafe. That is a rare occurrence, and it is a rare occurrence. I use wire crates all the time. I've never had that happen myself, but that is a risk factor. With the plastic crates, they can't get their arms through it, so it's pretty secure. So even if you got a smaller size crate when they're little that's wire that can grow with them for a while, and then their final crate is a plastic one, that's great. Dogs actually really like the plastic ones too, because it creates like a den environment, which is it's like dark and it's a comfortable environment for them. It's very calming. But you can also, the wire crates, you can get a cover that goes over them that does the same thing, which would also help reduce their arms going through because they're tied down and they can actually push through. It prevents that. So I would recommend a crate cover as well. So when you're crate training, we've locked up our heart, we've thrown away the key. Cockapoos in general, they're very, very social dogs, okay? So I find that they do best and calm quicker if they're in the bedroom with you. Now, it's important that they're not right beside you. So on the other end of your bed or on the floor on the other end of bed, please do not allow your puppy to sleep with you. Please don't. This causes all sorts of problems early on. It's fine when they're older. When they're older and they've been crate trained over a year, that's totally different. But when they're younger, we really need to set proper boundaries and teach them how to self-soothe. And I'll explain why in a little bit. But with crate training, you're going to put them in the crate. If you are a TV watcher at night, you absolutely cannot put that puppy in the crate until everything's been turned off, the lights are off, everything's quiet for the night, because if you do, they are going to screech and screech and screech and screech and screech. They know you're awake. And you are disturbing their sleep as well, because there's a lot of noise and commotion going on with the TV, so it's keeping them stimulated. And you're not going to be able to watch your shows anyways, because they're being too loud. So when everything's dark and calm, you put them in the crate. I recommend you put a blanket or have a crate cover that covers it completely. And you put them in the crate. We start our puppies off, so they may or may not whine and give you a hard time. Some go home great and our clients never have a problem. Some, because they're away from all their siblings, they attach hard to their new family, and that becomes their secure place, and that is perfectly normal for the first few days, that they attach hard to maybe like one person in particular, but it is important that they self-soothe. So we put them in the crate, and if they cry, you gotta let them cry. And I can't stress this enough. You do not talk to them. You do not put your hands in the crate. I had one lady years ago. She literally called me up. She goes, I don't know what to do. Like, he sleeps in his crate and he's quiet all night, but I have to have my hand in the crate all night. She had pulled the crate up next to the bed and literally kept her hand in the crate. She goes, I can't sleep like this anymore. It's killing my back. And he just won't calm without it. She made the mistake of putting her hand in the crate. And that is what that puppy now required to calm down. And she taught him that if he squealed, she was going to help him out that way. The same thing is true, that if he's squealing and squealing and squealing, you cannot open that door, ever. Do not open that door, because they are very smart. And you just taught them something. What you taught them was, if I scream and carry on, you're going to come rescue me. And what may have been a night or two of crying has now turned into weeks for you. Congratulations. Unfortunately, and that's how I've never had a puppy go beyond a week of crying, and it gets less and less every night. And that would be like the most stubborn puppy on the planet. But yeah, generally it's a night or two at best. And when you're crate training, you're not putting them in there and leaving them in there all night when they're young. They do not have the bladder control to do that. So we're not going to feed them late at night. They do not get water in their crate ever. No food, no water in their crate, no treats at bedtime, okay? So after dinner, we make sure they go to the bathroom always before they go into the crate. Always take them out, and then they go right into the crate. We lock it up, we close it up, we're quiet. If they cry, you're gonna let them cry. I'm sorry for those of you who have a real stubborn one and it ends up being all night, you need to let them do it. If you don't, it's going to be a much more difficult battle for you. So let them cry. There will be a point where they go quiet, and at that point they are sleeping, yay! And then they're gonna wake up again. Now, at this point, the way to judge whether or not they need to go out or they're awake and want to play and just want out of the crate, they're two very different sounds. So when they wake up and they need to go to the bathroom, they will yip a bit, or the most common thing is they will do a low whine. It's like, they sound very sad. That is a clear indication. I'm awake now, I have to go to the bathroom. So you need to take them out of that crate. They're indicating they have to go to the bathroom. They're doing their job. You're going to carry them to either the pee pad or outside, and they're going to go to the bathroom. At this point, after they've gone to the bathroom, you want to tell them what a good boy or girl they are, and you can give them a tiny wee little treat if you want, like a little training treat. That's okay. You want to pick them up, put them straight back into the bed. No food, no water, okay? No playtime. And that's really important. You don't play with them after. You don't encourage them to play. So you're going to take them, they go right back into the crate. Unfortunately, for many puppies, this is where they start whining again, but they settle quicker the second time. And then usually my puppies only wake once, maybe twice a night. Usually around somewhere, they wake up around midnight to 1 or 3 a.m., somewhere in that span. And then they sleep again, usually to 6:37 in the morning. So all in all, it's not terrible. For those of you who have ever had a newborn baby, it's far worse. And they outgrow it very quickly, usually a week or two, and then they're sleeping through the night. If you are being firm and encouraging them, not playing with them, not letting them out of the crate, they can hold it by 10, 12 weeks for most puppies. I mean, it would be rare if they had gone a month like that, but it can happen. Just like human children, the ability to hold your urine through the night is different for everyone, and they actually have to develop an enzyme. Their body's not producing it when they're young, that actually slows down urine production at night. And until that happens, they're actually not capable. So you can't get angry with them if they're, peeing in the crate at night, because they're not capable of holding it. So the rule of thumb too with a crate is you need enough room to lie down comfortably, but not enough room to go to the bathroom and get away from it. Because if they can, that's exactly what they're going to do. So don't, in the night, don't put half a bed and a pee pad and go, oh, I'm a genius. I'm not going to have to take my puppy out at all. They're going to go on the pad and go back to sleep. Yeah, that's not going to speed up anything. In fact, that's going to slow things down for you. So you don't want to teach them to go to the bathroom where they sleep. Dogs are naturally very clean animals, so they don't want to go to the bathroom where they sleep and where they eat. So you want to take them out, create good bathroom habits, and bring them back, okay? All right, so the final thing that I wanted to touch on the potty training was, as your puppy is going outside regularly and not using the pee pads, remove those as quickly as possible. They're a training tool. They are not meant to be used all the time, and trust me on this. It may seem really convenient when they're tiny, but the bigger they get, the bigger the poop, the more the pee, and the more it smells. So trust me, you really don't want to be doing that long term unless you absolutely have to, but I really recommend that you don't, okay? Things to be aware of when you bring your puppy home. Your puppy's going to be very sweet, very snuggly, seem very calm when you bring it home. And the reason for this being is, whether you think it or not, your puppy is actually under a tremendous amount of stress the day they go home, and actually for several days to a week after they go home. And a lot of people think because they're playing and they're eating, that they're not stressed at all, that they seem happy and content and their tail's wagging. No, they are 100% under stress. And how could they not be? You've just taken them from everything they know, their siblings, their mother, and now all the familiar spaces, sounds, and smells, and now you've plopped them down, told them to fend for themselves. They've had to learn a new house, new rules, new people, create new bonds. It's a lot. So it takes, after about 3 days, so on the first day, you're going to notice they're going to be fairly quiet overall. They're still going to be sweet and playful usually. They may or may not want to eat their food. That is a symptom of stress, so just be aware of that. And that's okay. You will also find probably the second day that puppy, even maybe the first day, the puppy's going to bond hard to one person in particular. Most likely the person that held the puppy on the way home in the car, which I do recommend you do. It does start the bonding process early, but if you have to come by yourself, please bring a crate for safety reasons. That puppy should be in the crate on the way home, okay? But when you're traveling home with your puppy, I do recommend that you just snuggle them. We do send home a blanket with siblings scent on it, as well as their first collar. And we do send home their food and their supplements with them, so that you are off to a good start. But the blanket with the siblings scent on it, and a product called Adaptil, we send home, we put on the blanket, which simulates the mother's pheromones, and it has a calming effect. It's a great product to have. It will speed up your crate training as far as them calming at night. So you put it in, you spray it in the crate, and then you wait 10 minutes, and then you put the puppy in, and it creates a calming effect. We're not doping them up. It's like similar to putting lavender oil on your pillowcase at night to help you sleep, be more relaxed and sleep at night. It's very effective when they're going to the vets, or they're going to be under any stressful situation. You can also spray it on their collar or a bandana off of them. You never spray it directly on them, and then you wait your 10 minutes, and then you put it on the puppy or dog after. It's a wonderful product. You can buy it at Amazon, most pet shops these days. I do recommend the spray versus the collar, or they have a nebulizer or whatever. It like sprays into the air. Unless you have a dog with severe separation anxiety, I wouldn't buy that. They're very costly. But so I would recommend that you do the Adaptil as well, and look into that. So anyway, so when you head them home, after the second day, you're going to see them start exploring a little bit more. And then the third day is when I often get an email or a phone call from my clients going, Jessica, you misrepresented this puppy to me. You sold me the puppy from hell. And I know some of you are probably laughing right now, but the truth of the matter is they've been under severe stress for about 3 days. And in about 3 days, they're starting to get comfortable in their environment. And they haven't burned a significant amount of energy in 3 days. So that's really bottled up. Also, until you brought your puppy home, they have vented all their energy with their siblings. Okay? How do they do that? They do that by biting and growling and chasing and tumbling. Unfortunately, this is how puppies play. It's to get them ready for, like if they were in the wild, this would be teaching them how to, towards bringing down prey so that their survival techniques. And it creates a hierarchy with the dogs as well. Dogs communicate with sound and touch with their mouths. So when your puppy at day 3 and is starting to get very comfortable, hasn't burned any energy, is interested in playing rambunctiously now, often they nip a lot. This is not okay, but this is how puppies communicate with each other. So they're not being vicious, they're not nasty, they're trying to engage and play with you. Unfortunately, puppies have very sharp teeth, and it doesn't take much for them to cut you or draw blood. When you have young children involved, it is even more difficult because a puppy will grab a hold of their pant leg, maybe nip them a little bit while they're doing that, or their exposed ankle if they're wearing shorts. And what does a child do? A child screams, a child runs away. But what this says to the puppy is they're having a wonderful time. This is great. I'm going to chase them. I'm having so much fun. And then they grab a hold and it heightens the level of aggressive play that they're doing. But they're having a blast. They think you're having a blast. They think the child's having a blast. The child's crying. They don't understand. So you need to teach your child and yourself. When the puppy does that, we teach no bites here. They are familiar with the phrase, and they need to stand their ground. They need to not run, because if they run and they move, that just engages the level of play higher and it lasts longer. So we're going to say no bites. We're going to redirect with a toy or a chew treat or something like that they're allowed to have. And because it is a natural thing for them to engage that way, we still want to allow them to vent that sort of energy because it's deeply ingrained in their instincts to do so on an appropriate thing. So a chew toy. Our cockapoos really like stuffing-less toys and they flop a lot, so it does simulate when an animal kills, like if they grab a hold of a rabbit, they grab it and they shake it. The purpose of that is to break the neck, and it does heavily satisfy that need for that in our dogs, and I do encourage you to encourage them to engage with the toy versus skin. You can also, if they're doing it a lot, you can also stand up and stop engaging with the dog so they start learning that if I play this way, they don't want to play with me anymore. And some catch on pretty quickly, but that doesn't work for everybody. So often there is a time when a puppy is a little extra rambunctious today and they've grabbed a hold of your pant leg and you're saying no bites and they're not releasing. You've tried to get them to take the toy, they're not interested. So at this point, because mentally they're so focused in on the they actually can't even acknowledge what's going on around them. So this is where physical touch is important. Now, I want to make it very clear. We do not spank, we do not hit. When I say physical touch, it's a touch. And the whole purpose of it is to snap them out of it mentally because they can't hear you anymore. They're too focused on one thing. So what we do is where their hips meet their groin area here on the side, we give a little poke. It's a soft area, there's no bone. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't hurt them, it's uncomfortable, but it gains their attention. We poke them and we say no bites in a loud tone. And when they stop, you instantly tell them, good boy, good girl, give them their toy. When they grab a hold of that, good boy, good girl. You have to repeat that as many times as you have to. And that is really important. I also want to really stress that allowing a puppy to put its teeth on anyone's skin, any human skin, is not acceptable. And the reason for this being, and I don't care how playful it is, I mean, I've heard from people, they're like, oh, they're so gentle, they just touch and they go, and they touch and they go. Dogs communicate with their mouths. They communicate through bite, communicate through sounds. If you give them permission to put their teeth on your skin, you've given them permission to communicate in that way. So at some point, and it will happen, I guarantee you, if you've given them permission to touch your skin with their teeth, even in playful and innocence, one day when they get hurt, they don't like what's going on, they're feeling like they want to be alone, they don't want to be around kids or anything, they will bite. They will bite and they will draw blood because you've told them it's an acceptable way for them to communicate. That's not the dog's fault. As an owner, it's your responsibility to teach them the appropriate way to communicate. And so if you want to make sure that your dog is not going to be prone to that, you need to set firm boundaries early on, and you need to teach your kids how to set firm boundaries early on. It's really hard when you have very little ones, but you need to be there to reinforce and teach your kids. Be present in the room when they're with the puppy at all times when they're really when the kids are small and the puppy's out. When the puppy's having time with the kids, you need to be present. You can't just let the puppy run around and then and then they're like, ow, 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 and it's too late. You need to be there instantaneous to correct that. As the puppy is no longer doing it, you can give them more free roam with the kids as long as the kids are being respectful, okay? Accidents happen with kids. I mean, they may trip over a puppy. Stuff like that happens. Cockapoos are extremely forgiving. That's why they're such a lovely dog for children. But if your child is bouncing on them and sitting on them and pulling their ears and doing silly things like going up to them and removing their bones from their mouth when they're chewing, that is a dangerous thing to be doing. So they need to be supervised and taught early on the appropriate way to conduct themselves with a dog. Also, it is never appropriate for a child to crawl in a dog's crate. That is a surefire way for to get their face bitten. It is their safe space. You would hope there's lots of dogs that never mind that, but certainly it is a recipe for potential disasters, so we don't want to allow your children, you teach them not to go in the crate when the dog's in there, okay? All right. So, when you bring your puppy home, I want you to not, please follow this, no visitors for a week. I know everybody's very excited to show off their new puppy. Do not take your puppy anywhere. Do not bring anybody new into your house. No dogs, no people. Like I said, you may not think your puppy's under stress because you haven't seen them in that environment previously when they're not under stress. But it's causing stress. And the more you introduce them to too soon, when they're still trying to adjust to what is going on, the more likely they are to have more stress and more issues. And some serious things can happen when your puppy is overstressed. Puppies have a developing immune system. When they're stressed, it compromises their immune system. So there's a more potential opening for them to get sick. Also, when they're stressed, it can cause digestive upset, diarrhea, in extreme cases, sometimes vomiting. They can also stop drinking. And if any of those things happen, your puppy can get dehydrated very quickly, all right? Which can be life-threatening. Here at Legacy Cockapoos, we feed, if you're not aware, we feed a raw-based diet. We do believe that this is biologically appropriate and that it is the best diet for your animal for longevity and health. we have been feeding raw since 1998, and the health in our dogs has been outstanding. We haven't had a single case of cancer, not one, in over 25 years. And we also, our dogs generally live 16 to 18 years at least on average. If you're getting less than that out of a cockapoo, something isn't right. I don't think they've gone from natural causes, that there would be complications at that point. So with raw diet, it's biologically appropriate. It is a mix of muscle meat, organ meat, ground bone, and fruit and veggie mix. Now for me, before commercial diets were available is when I started, I worked with a certified veterinary nutritionist, and my veterinary nutritionist rammed it into me over and over that fruit and veggies are extremely important because there's nutrients in them that the meat alone and organ cannot supply. There's two schools of thought when it comes to raw feeding diets. Some believe that you don't put any fruit and vegetables in, and then the other one is fruit and veggie mix. So our diet is completely ground. What we send you home with is called Bold by Nature Mega, and it looks like this. This is turkey. We usually we try to send all our puppies home with turkey. It's a great entry protein. It's more novel, and they look like patties. They look like hamburger patties, basically, but they're completely raw. This is a 4-pound box, and there'll be 4 packets, and in each packet there is 2 patties, each patty weighing 8 ounces. Generally, sorry, I'm not going to die. Each patty weighing about 8 ounces. Generally, you want to thaw no more than 3 to 5 days in your fridge at a time. It's important when feeding raw that any precautions you would follow with cooking meat yourself, wash your hands, wash your utensils, wash the bowls afterwards is important. You don't leave the meat in the fridge any longer than you would if you were cooking a steak or thawing a roast in the fridge as well. One of the biggest things I get from people, one of their biggest concerns when it comes to raw, and there's a lot of misinformation on the internet, and it can turn into a whining vortex, is that people are concerned that if they feed their dog a raw diet and then their dog kisses them, that they will get sick from the bacteria. Well, okay. There is not a single recorded case or proven case in any way, shape, or form that a single person has ever gotten ill from a dog that has been fed raw food. Kibble-fed dogs, on the other hand, lots of people have gotten sick. So that is important to know. When you're talking to your vet, the new vets coming out of vet school are actually being taught quite a bit on fresh food diets, like raw or gently cooked or freeze-dried and dehydrated diets. They're all considered fresh food diets. And they're becoming more willing to work with you because owners are demanding better for their pets. There's a lot of people that feed raw these days, and they've seen the benefit of it with their animals. So if you have a vet that is very opposed, and it's not uncommon to have a vet that is not comfortable with you feeding raw, their 2 biggest objections, and they're absolutely 100% valid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing with the vets on this. They worry about parasites and bacteria. So I'm going to address that now. I only feed human grade product. I will not feed a dog food that is not doing a human grade product. With the human grade meat, that means all the precautions and all the rules that were followed for your chicken or your beef or your pork in the grocery store that was deemed safe for you to eat has been followed with this, okay? So there are no parasites. It's been frozen for the appropriate amount of time to kill everything, just like with human stuff. The other thing, bacteria, they worry about bacteria, salmonella, that kind of stuff. A lot of commercially available diets have gone through a pasteurization process and they've killed the harmful bacteria. You can certainly get those that do that. And I personally prefer not to do that because if they've been frozen for the appropriate amount of time and they've been processed properly with human grade, the bacteria levels are going to be very low, if any. And there is a lot of beneficial bacteria in that is good for your animal's gut. Okay, so I have had zero issues with any of my dogs being ill from raw. None of them have ever gotten ill from eating raw. The bigger reason why, on top of it being biologically appropriate, is when we talk about kibbles, kibble is a very disgusting thing. If you understood deeply how kibble was made, you would be repulsed. And honestly, I'm going to share a bit with you. Kibble, number one, there's very few dog kibble brands that are made from human quality meat. There are a couple, like Open Farm, which is very expensive, but there are very few. Most of them are made from rendered kill. And what people don't realize is when it's rendered kill, it means the animal died from sickness or was euthanized because it broke a leg or something like that. If it had been sick for a while before and had been giving a lot of medications, all those things are still in the animal, okay? Especially the euthanasia drugs. Then they put them in a big vat and they superheat them to try to kill any harmful bacteria or viruses that may have killed those animals. And when they do that, the superheating process causes a significant amount of carcinogens, which are not good for your dog, which heavily contribute to cancer. Then furthermore, in kibbles, they add a lot of grains. Grains and fillers. So grains and fillers actually aren't biologically appropriate for your dog. They are not healthy for your dog. And their digestive tract is not geared to digesting complex things like grains. A dog's digestive tract is very short and it is geared to digesting high levels of protein. So when they use fillers like grains, the stools get quite large because they're actually not digesting them at all for the most part, but the amount of grains that they do ingest and do digest is way higher than they biologically can handle. So generally, they can handle a little bit of grain, but it's generally below 10%. Most kibbles are like 30-40% or more. Some of them are like 70%. It depends on what quality of kibble you're feeding, is carbs or grains based. Unfortunately, when it comes to cancer specifically, cancer feeds off of glucose. So in a dog, because they metabolize everything much faster than a human, when they do get cancerous cells, basically you're throwing gasoline on a fire and it goes from 0 to 1,000,000. This is why you see dogs that they were fine today and they're gone in a few weeks to months from cancer, and the owners are so shell-shocked. They didn't see it coming. It happens so quickly. This is common with cancer in our pets. I do think the largest contributor for our pets is what we feed them and the cancer level. And in my own dogs, I feel like the proof is in the pudding because I have never had any cancer ever in my dogs. And I do attribute that to the diet and also not over-vaccinating my pets. I do think that also plays a factor. Also with the kibble, when it comes down the chute, after they've added all these super heated meats and grains and all this stuff, even if it's grain free, they add lentils and other things. Anyways, when it comes down the chute, it is so not like food that if you offer it to a dog, they will not eat it. They do not consider it food. It smells terrible. They don't want it. Their instinct tells them this is not food. They won't touch it. And then the pet food companies roll it in a flavor enhancer to entice the animals to eat it. Okay? That right there should send alarm bells off. The dogs themselves are not registering it as food. And then we're going to lie to them to try to get them to eat it. Their body doesn't recognize anything that's going on in there, and the things that are going on are not the best. So when it comes to kibble versus raw diet, some of the other drawbacks are kibble-based fed dogs have an awful lot of stools that they pass. They're very soft, which is not natural and not normal. When I say soft, they're still formed, but if you've ever had the opportunity to step in or pick up a dog poop that is kibble fed, it squishes when you pick it up. That's not normal, actually, believe it or not. It could be formed, but that's not normal. A raw-fed dog, it's very, very firm. And because their stools are so firm, dogs have glands on the inside of their anus. And the point to these glands are to lubricate their stools as they come out. So when the stools pass, it pushes on these glands, it lubricates the stools, and it comes out. Raw-fed dogs hardly ever have an issue with anal glands. Kibble-fed dogs, on the other hand, it's a chronic problem. Usually when you go to a groomer, it's a normal thing for your groomer to release the anal glands on your dog every single time they're in the bathtub. But when they are kibble-fed, what's happening is the stool is so soft, it cannot actually release those anal glands, so they're not releasing. And what happens is the fluid builds up, and then it gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. It's supposed to be watery consistency, but it can get thick, like really thick, like thicker than toothpaste. And when that happens, they get what's called impacted anal glands, and which can progress into anal gland infections, which is very painful for your dog. And a symptom of anal gland issues is them scooting their bum on the floor. It can also be a sign of parasites, but the number one reason why a dog would scoot its bum on the floor is that its anal glands are bothering it. Definitely more natural, healthier for their whole digestive health to feed a raw-based diet for sure. Okay, the other resistance you are going to get from the vet, and they are absolutely 100% correct, and you should be really, when you step into raw, you do need to make sure that you feed your dog a balanced diet. That is paramount. There are people out there that believe you can throw your dog a chicken leg quarter every day, several times a day, and that is adequate raw feeding. And they'll state, they're like, oh, look, their teeth are so clean, their coat is so healthy, they got lots of energy, and that's great. They would be for a while. Unfortunately, when it comes to nutritional deficiencies, you will not know until it's too late. My vet actually is very willing to work with raw fed. They see the benefit of it as long as it's done properly. But they have some pretty cautionary tales. They actually had a breeder in a few years ago, and they had to euthanize the entire litter because she had just been feeding them ground muscle meat and nothing else. And she believed that this was adequate raw feeding. And it 100% is not. There's no balance. They weren't getting the nutrition that they needed. And these puppies, literally, their bones were floppy. And unfortunately, at this point, they were all about 12 weeks old, and she couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. She thought they had some sort of severe genetic abnormality, and the vet had to inform her that they didn't have enough calcium and phosphorus in their diet to build healthy bones. And unfortunately, there was no coming back from that. And the kindest thing to do was to euthanize the entire litter because they were in severe pain. They couldn't walk. And that is where raw goes bad. And that's why your vet is cautioning, right? They're concerned. They'll cite often Royal Canin. Royal Canin, feed Royal Canin. Royal Canin is the only dog food company that till now they hire their own vets and then they do long-term studies. They're the only company that does it. They're owned by the Mars company. And that in itself, it's good that they're doing studies, don't get me wrong. They're doing studies and their studies prove that your pet can survive, but not thrive necessarily on their food. They're also, you have to keep in mind, the vet pushes a lot of Hills, Science diet, they're veterinary prescription diets. These are all made by Royal Canin, they own them all. And the reason why they push these diets is because they cite that the studies have been done. And I understand why vets do that, but they also get monetary kickbacks. And vets make a large percentage of their income off of the food they sell. And Royal Canin gives huge kickbacks to vets and breeders, I know this firsthand, breeders that sell and pump their products. They send home so much free stuff for you to send, makes you look great as a breeder. But I will not feed that to my animals. Every vet I have ever met will tell you that dogs don't need grains. Grains are not healthy. You shouldn't have that in your dogs. But when you look at every single prescription diet, and also keep in mind, everybody knows that corn and glutens are bad. Every vet knows this. But when you look at every veterinary diet out there, pretty much made by Hills or Science Diet, those are the first ingredients. And to me, that's sending strongly mixed message. But the reason why they do it, and it's the only thing until now that studies have been cited. There is a coalition going on right now for raw food feeders. They are testing raw foods. They are doing studies to test the longevity, the health of these animals on raw so that we can combat this misinformation. They are being done because we recognize that vets who are the ones that we look to for advice on our pets. This is what they're taught in school. So keep in mind, they teach this in veterinary college. It's a biased study because they're doing these studies to promote their own product. And so it would be different if it was an independent study done legitimately to find out which foods are the best and how they affect the dogs in their lifetime. That's not the purpose of these studies at all. So it's taught in veterinary school. You also need to understand that the scope of a vet's nutritional education when it comes to diet is like 3 days to a week. They are not schooled in nutrition very well. So for them to tell you deep insight into a diet and what's appropriate and what's not, it's not really their preview. They don't really know much about it. And they're not always honest about that. Unless they've done the extra schooling and gone to a specialty, which is a certified canine nutritionist, certified canine veterinary nutritionist, which is like having a specialty in heart surgery. Unless that is who you're talking to about your dog's diet, they really don't have a lot of insight on it. So it's not really your source to go to for nutritional information because all they're going to do is cite you the studies from Royal Canin. If you want to talk seriously about nutrition, you go see a certified veterinary nutritionist and move from there, right? So our puppies heading home, our mini size eat anywhere from 4 to 6 ounces normally a day, and that's split into 3 meals. Our standards are anywhere from 6 to 10 ounces a day, split into 3 meals. Now, when it comes to raw feeding, the rule of thumb is for a puppy, you feed 5 to 8% of their body weight daily. and for an adult dog, it's 2 to 3% of their body weight. So weekly, you are going to have to weigh your puppy and adjust their diet as needed. Bold by Nature on their website actually has a food calculator where you can enter in the age of your dog, the weight of your dog. I think it's projected adult weight as well, and then it will calculate how much you should be feeding your puppy at that time. It's great as a base starting area, but it's not like a hardcore rule because every dog breed and every puppy has a unique metabolism and nutritional requirements. So some may need more, some may need less. I find the Bold by Nature website is very generous in what they are giving their puppies, and I do like my puppies a little bit pudgy heading home. So I feed mine far more generously than a lot of other breeders do. So when I'm saying it's generous, I really feel it's generous. But the rule of thumb is when you're talking about healthy body weight, you always go off of healthy body weight. So when you raw feed a puppy, they absolutely love their food. Raw fed dogs consume their food in seconds. It's not like with kibble where they pick at it, they walk away, they pick at it, it's very slow. No, it's gone in seconds. And a lot of people take from this that they are starving. You're not feeding them enough. That's 100% incorrect. They just really like their food. Consuming raw food quickly isn't really a risk like it is with kibble. So people worry about bloat in large breed dogs. Standard poodles are one of those breeds that can be prone to bloat, which is where the stomach flips. And certainly when you feed kibble, it goes in dry, they consume water, and it expands. And if they do that too quickly, everything can flip. And it is life-threatening. But with raw fed, because nothing's expanding, the risk of that is significantly lowered. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen, but it would be very rare on a raw fed dog that would happen. It's normal for them to eat quickly. You don't have to slow them down. If you really want to slow them down, keep them busy for longer, you can get what's called a lick mat, where it's a mat and it has little like teeth that all stick out. They're kind of flat. It's not dangerous, but you squish the food in it, so they literally have to lick it out, and it slows them down tremendously, and it keeps them busy for a long time. So that's an option as well. But just because they consume their food quickly does not mean they need more. And a raw fed dog is always happy to eat more. So just be aware of that. Always go by body condition. Body condition. So I'm going to show you how to do that and judge correctly, so you know if your dog's an ideal body weight or under or overweight. So on the side of the dog, so when you're like this is their side, this is their rib cage here. Right behind their arms, their front legs, you're going to feel here, not down here under their armpits. They don't actually have any fat stores down there, so all you're going to feel is bone. And if that's what you're doing, reaching around there, even an obese dog will feel bony under there, okay? So on the sides, you're going to feel like this. You're going to take note of what it feels like. Now, you're going to hold your hand up, and if you put your hand up like this and you feel across where your knuckles would be, and you can feel it, it's quite meaty, it's quite beefy. If your dog feels similar to that or more, it's obese and overweight. We're gonna flip our hand over, make a fist. We go like this. Oh, we can feel how bumpy and bony that feels. If your dog feels like that, they're underweight. Straighten our hand out. Go across here. We can feel each bone, but it doesn't feel significantly bony. We can feel a healthy little bit of flesh over that. That's great. That's ideal weight right there, okay? I hear from people sometimes, especially when I was grooming, people would say, my dog just has a lot of it's not fat, it's muscle. Unfortunately, dogs don't have muscle over their rib cage. So if there's anything between the skin and that, it's fat. And there's a healthy amount of fat, and then there's an unhealthy amount of fat. If your dog is overweight, you are shortening their life, okay? That's true, hard, scientific fact. You are shortening their life. You are putting stress on their joints. You are putting stress on their heart. It is really important, and all their bodily organs, it's really important that you keep them at an ideal weight. The same thing can happen if you underfeed your dog. If your dog's too thin, they're not getting enough nutrients, which is going to damage them. So an ideal weight is best. Slightly higher than ideal weight is better than slightly below. Okay, but we don't want obese dogs. We want ideal weight dogs, healthy, especially with puppies when they're rapidly growing. We don't want to put any more stress on those joints to minimize disc disease, hip dysplasia, and luxating patella, because weight can be a factor in that. All right. Just get my notes here, folks. When it comes to treats, we really like single ingredient treats. So freeze-dried or dehydrated liver, lung, jerkies, sweet potato. My dogs love pumpkin, and pumpkin's a great chew. It lasts them a while, dehydrated. You can get dehydrated apple, and then you can move on to fresh foods. I love fresh foods, and the sky's the limit. There's really not much they can't have. Mushrooms and onions and grapes. Mushrooms, that's not true. Dogs can actually eat whatever mushrooms we eat, but they can't eat any of the poisonous ones, just like we can't. So mushrooms are fine. I just find a lot of dogs don't really like mushrooms, but grapes, chocolate, obviously, and onions are toxic to your dogs. So those you stay away from, but apples, blueberries, banana, pear, carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, if they like leafy greens, some really like lettuce. Raw-fed dogs, if you introduce them to those things young, they really tend to enjoy them quite a lot. And you will often find when you're chopping up dinner that they're there waiting for their little snack. And they don't really care if it's a green bean or a sugar pea or whatever. They're perfectly content with that, and they love it. They're happy to have their healthy treats. And I encourage you to stay with single, natural, healthy ingredient treats, okay? When it comes to training and treats, it's really important that you use protein, and because it's a high reward treat, especially when you're teaching new things. So I usually recommend when you're training that you actually use like a boiled turkey breast, not chicken, turkey breast. It can't be fried. The fat can actually cause some serious health issues. They can't have a super fatty diet, or it can cause acute pancreatitis, which is life-threatening. So a boiled turkey breast, and then you cut it into like little 1 centimeter cubes, is a great thing to have when you're introducing new training techniques and you really want to gain their focus. It's high reward. It lights up the reward center of their brain and makes them more focused and makes them more eager to please and leaves a lasting impact on them as to what got them that. And so then they want to repeat. So that's really, you really want to go with high protein when you're teaching new stuff. So individual needs when it comes to food and stuff like that as well is important to note. So I give you a starting off rate of where your puppy what they're eating when they head home, and you're going to get a calculation online, potentially what they should be eating as an adult. So individual dog and their individual metabolism and everybody's lifestyle is a little bit different. So a dog who only walks for 30 minutes a day and is a couch potato and has a fairly slow metabolism and just really likes sleeping all the time is going to have very low nutritional requirements. So they're going to eat a lot less than, say, a dog that's active in dog sports or goes jogging with their owner or has a high metabolism. Those dogs are going to eat far more. I have a 23-pound poodle that eats 3 pounds of food a day. That is far above what a typical dog that size eats. He's very active. He has a very high metabolism. He runs very hot. Most of my standard poodles only eat a pound a day, to give you an example, and they're 2 to 3 times his size. So it's unique and it's individual, okay? And I do have some standard poodles that only eat 8 ounces a day because they have a slower metabolism, and that's okay. As your dog ages, there are points in their life where their metabolism often slows down. So around 3 to 4 years of age, and then again between 6 to 8 years, often the metabolism slows down. And when that happens, you have to adjust their food intake or they will become obese, okay? So just be aware of that. Also, another change that sometimes happens is when you alter a female, sometimes their metabolism slows down. I don't really find that too much with my dogs, but it can happen. So just be aware of it, that you might have to adjust their food within the few months after they've had a spay. That is possible. With the raw food, I've told you what brand we send home. There are definitely lots of commercially prepared brands that you can try. If you're starting out with raw and you've never fed raw before, I 100% say start with a commercial brand. If you want to move to prepping your own, then I would strongly suggest you work with a certified veterinary nutritionist to formulate your diets for you, so ensuring that the dog food is balanced, and then move from there. There are many other brands. So as much as I love Bold by Nature, they are very limited in their proteins. So they only offer about 5. Cockapoos can easily get bored with their diet if there's not enough rotation. So when it comes to raw feeding, actually, you need to rotate the proteins regularly. It's not like with a kibble fed dog, if you move from like a sweet potato and fish and you want to move them to a beef or lamb diet, that if you do that like cold abrupt, it'll give them diarrhea. That's not true with raw. So basically, when you introduce a new protein, you feed it for a week at a time, and we're going to monitor them to make sure that there is no reaction. Basically, we're looking for an intolerance or an allergy. So intolerance or allergy could be diarrhea. Sometimes it's just the fat content and you just need to ease them into it. If you've moved from like turkey and then you gave them lamb or beef and it's a much higher fat content. So you might need to ease them into it a little slower. But signs that it doesn't work for them, that they may be intolerant or have an allergy, is all of a sudden chronically dirty ears. If you have a lot of black gunk coming out of their ears or yellow gunk coming out of their ears, that's a pretty good indication that something you're feeding them isn't agreeing with them, and that you should take that off of their roster. So when you're introducing a new protein, you don't give them any new treats. You only give them the ones that you know that you've already tested and they're good with, okay? And then we're gonna feed it for a week. We're gonna see. Another sign can be itching, dry skin. Hot spots are often associated, like red splotches all over them. They could ooze, they might not. Hair might fall out. These are all symptoms of an intolerance or an allergy. They call them intolerance when they're puppies unless they're going into anaphylactic shock. But my experience has been that if your puppy has an intolerance when it's young, it turns into an allergy later on. So it's best to just nip that in the bud and just stop it now. Okay, so if any of those things happen, then be aware of that. So just also be aware that you hear a lot that floppy-eared dogs get chronic ear infections, and that just comes with the territories. My dogs actually don't. And if they are getting chronic ear infections, it's one of 2 things. It is either an intolerance or allergy, or when they were bathing or swimming, they got water down the ear canal. So it's really important that once you've bathed them or they've been swimming, that you use an ear wash solution, preferably something with salicylic acid, and then you fill the entire ear canal, you rub it, and then they're going to shake their head. Any water that's down that ear canal is going to come out. It's alcohol-based, loosely, like a light alcohol, so it dries out, and it's going to remove that risk of moisture being stuck down there and allowing bacteria or fungus to grow down there. When it comes to allergies, that's just a lot of gunk. So what you have to do is identify the allergy and cut it out. Generally, my guys don't get ear infections just 'cause. there's a reason behind it. And if you pinpoint the reason, it doesn't have to become a chronic issue. Okay. And I have many dogs that have maybe had one or two ear infections in their entire life by the time they pass. So if you're on top of it and you're aware of it and you know what the triggers are, you can prevent it. Okay. Okay. So with the raw diet, I don't care what raw you feed. I don't believe they're not really they say they're complete, but some of them are complete. Some of them you have to add supplements. The one I'm sending you home with, you do have to add supplements to complete it. It calls for an omega-3, 6, and 9 supplement, which is great. I send you, but I do like to add also a multivitamin. The reason for this being is not all of them are balanced. Some brands are better than others. And I 100% want to know that my puppies are getting everything they need. So the multivitamins I send you home with are water soluble. So if they don't need them, they just pee them out. It's not going to hurt them in any way, shape, or form. But they also have whey protein in them, which for dogs makes the nutrients they get out of their food more biologically available for them to absorb. So it means they're getting more out of their food, which is great because it also means you don't have to feed as much because they're pulling more and more nutrients out than they would on their own. So we send you home. We've paired up with Biologic Vet. And they're absolutely wonderful company. I love them. And they send my clients home free of charge with full-size product. All right. And so these are the BioVites. And the instructions, feeding instructions as per weight are on the back. And these are given on their food once a day. And I do want you to mix this in thoroughly so they can't pick it around. Some dogs aren't the biggest fan. So if it's sitting on top, they'll pick around it. If it's mixed in their food, they can't pick around it, okay? And then they are also sending you home with biofats. Again, once a day on the food, the feeding instructions per weight are on the back. Omega-369 is extremely important for your growing pup. It is responsible for proper brain and eye development. When in an adult dogs, it's mostly responsible for healthy skin and coat. So when it comes to 369, there's a lot of people and they believe that you can just give them human supplements, and you actually can't. Dogs require different quantities of 3, 6, and 9 than humans do. So you could actually because omegas are fat soluble vitamin. Once they enter the system, they build up. You don't just pee them out. So if you have the wrong balance and you're giving it to them regularly, you can cause toxicity. So it's really important that you have a balanced, properly omega-3, 6, 9 supplement for canines and felines. This one's for both. But what's biologically appropriate for them and what their needs are. The other thing we add to our meals and we send you home with is Probiotic Miracle. Now, we're not going to send you home with a full jar, but we are going to send you home several weeks worth. This particular jar is their larger jar, and this jar is 360 doses per jar. So for your mini-sized cockapoo, so it's 50 pounds and below, you'd give 1 scoop, which is 360 doses in here of 1 scoop. This would last you a year. Okay, so the vet sells one, and I believe you can actually buy it over the counter now. It's called Purina Fortiflora, and it actually does work. But with cockapoos, one of their number one allergies is chicken. So I do ask you to avoid chicken and chicken byproducts. So because Fortiflora uses chicken liver as a backer to entice dogs to eat it, for me, that has a strike against it. I have used it. It does work really well. Don't get me wrong. It does but it's not going to work for everybody. The other thing I don't like about it is that it comes in a box, and each box has 30 sachets. So and each sachet is 1 dose. And so that will last you a month. And it costs about $48 to $60 depending on where you're buying it from. So that's a substantial investment every month. And it has about 1 billion CFUs per dose. But it does work. It does work, and if you need it in a pinch, if your dog's having issues, sure, go ahead and use it. But Probiotic Miracle, I've been using this for years. It has 2 billion CFUs in it, so twice as many. It's completely tasteless and odorless. It doesn't have any backing in it. This is why I really like it. And also, this jar is going to last you a year. You are going to have to order it from the US, sorry, but I do give you a 40% off discount code, and it's a permanent code for life. So you can keep using that over and over. So when you order this, they are going to charge you $30 for shipping. I'm going to let you know that right now. It comes fairly quickly, a week or two at most. But this is generally, I think the normal price is $39.99, but you're going to get 40% off of that for this, or at least that's the current price. It may change. And then $30 for shipping. But this is going to last you a whole year. We're talking the difference between cents a day and dollars a day. It's a huge difference. And I have tried them both, and I find this one personally works way better than the one the vet gives out, the Purina one. So I would recommend that you order that. It should be given daily. It's not a requirement though, but it is a strong recommendation because good external health starts with good internal health. So keeping that whole digestive tract rocking on a healthy pace is going to help with a lot of things. It's going to boost their immune system. It's going to keep their stools great, going to keep their tummy happy, but it also plays a role in the amount of shedding they do and their skin and coat and allergies, actually, believe it or not, how susceptible they are to allergies. So it plays a much bigger role than a lot of people are aware of. It also helps with their breath because when everything's happy in their gut, their breath isn't as bad. So just be aware of that. Okay, so the other question I get a lot is, well, if I feed my dogs a raw diet, that's really inconvenient. Like if I go away or I travel with my dog or I'm going camping. And my answer to you is, yes, it is. And I'm not going to lie and say that it's not, because it is. So when you're home, feed raw. Beautiful. It's feed raw. It's convenient at that point. It's the difference between taking it out of a kibble bin on the floor or out of your fridge in a container out of your fridge. Tomato, in my opinion. But freeze-dried diets. Freeze-dried diets are raw, but they've removed the moisture. And the wonderful thing, because they are raw and they've removed the moisture, they do not require integration. So if you're traveling, you can take that freeze-dried diet, which has a really long shelf life, and feed it to your dog. Be aware, if you feed it to them dry, they're going to need substantially more water. If you feed it to them, you can also rehydrate it with warm water and they're happy to have it. So it's a very convenient way to feed your dogs. If you decide raw is not for you and you really are so grossed out by it, you just can't do it. Freeze-dried diet is what I recommend first. And second would be a dehydrated diet. Freeze-dried is superior over dehydrated, but dehydrated is far superior over kibble. Okay, and all those freeze-dried and dehydrated I would want you to use a human meat, human grade diet. That's also still important when you're doing those. But it is a simpler way of feeding your dog if you're not into the distributing the raw. All right. Something to point out too, kibble versus raw fed dogs, is I get a lot of people that get concerned when their puppy heads home because they're not chronically at the water dish. And that is totally normal for a raw fed dog because they're getting like 70 to 80% of their moisture through their food. A kibble fed dog is in a constant state of dehydration. And that shows. That's why they're chronically gorging themselves on water, because they're so thirsty. raw fed dogs tend to have very moisturized skin, very glossy coats. They have minimal tartar buildup, actually. That's a huge benefit because they have the proper bacteria in their mouth, and the proper bacteria in their mouth really reduces the amount of tartar buildup that damages and eats away at the teeth that causes tooth decay in a raw fed dog. In a kibble-fed dog, it's the opposite. The kibble increases the amount of bad bacteria in their mouth, so you get more tartar. And kibble-fed dogs tend to have a duller, drier coat, unless you're heavily supplementing with omegas on top of that. They comparatively. Now, I'm not saying all kibble-fed dogs have dry, dingy coats. I'm saying comparatively, a lot of kibble-fed dogs compared to a raw dog, side by side, have a drier coat than a raw fed dog, because raw fed dogs are well moisturized and hydrated, as they should be. So they're not in a constant state of trying to catch up the moisture. Yeah, so that's, okay. If you decide that raw is 100% not for you, you cannot do freeze-dried or dehydrated, and you're only going to want to do kibble. So this is where it gets really complicated. There are a lot of brands that will void your warranty, and this is where we run into a lot of sticky stuff. So a lot of companies went grain-free because they did the studies, realized dogs don't need grains, it's not healthy for them. And originally they started using a lot of white potato. And white potato actually is completely undigestible to dogs, and it causes a lot of regurgitation and vomiting. So just FYI, don't feed your dogs potatoes. It's not good for them. They can't digest it. It's gonna rock their gut. So they stopped using potatoes because who wants to feed food to their animals where they're regurgitating all the time? And so they moved to lentils, peas, pea fiber, and chickpeas, or also known as garbanzo beans. Now, I don't know if you're aware or not, but in the last few years, there's been a huge outcry on that you shouldn't feed your dog a grain-free diet, okay? All vets will tell you that your dog should not have grains. All right. So this is conflicting information when they're telling you to feed like Royal Canin, which is full of grains. Your dog does not need grains. There's nothing in the grains that's benefiting them. There's nothing in the grains that they're missing that's causing an issue. So the issue with grain-free diets is some dogs were developing DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy. But they have since done studies and actually have come to conclusions as to what the issue is and was. Adding grains is not helping your puppy at all. It's not going to do anything for you except negatives, really. The problem is dogs need taurine in their diet. Taurine's really easy for them to get. Unfortunately, certain things can block the absorption of taurine. And peas, pea fiber, lentil, garbanzo beans, or chickpeas are those things. So they replace the carbohydrates with these things. And these things in themselves are not bad. I mean, they digest them very well. They're easy on their gut. That's why they replaced them with them. But unfortunately, when you feed kibble, you feed the same thing day in, day out. So every day they feed them that kibble containing those items, they're not absorbing taurine. And so when you do that long term, the lack of taurine causes an enlargement of the heart, which is why there's been a link to grain-free diets and DCM. Okay, so you have to look for food, number one, that has a very high protein content that is human grade. So that's a challenge in itself. That really narrows the field down. And when I say high for protein content, nothing less than 60%, and I would prefer if it was 80. That would be more ideal, okay? Then you need something that doesn't contain pea fiber, lentils, garbanzo beans, or chickpeas, also known as chickpeas. And that is the more challenging thing right now. So pumpkin, great. Sweet potatoes are okay in moderation. You don't want to do a lot of that, but in moderation. You want to look for things where the high ingredients are pumpkin, squash, sweet potato, pumpkin, squash, blueberries, cranberries, kale, broccoli. All these superfoods are great for them, and so far there's nothing to prove that they are not completely healthy and there's any negative side effects. So those are the sorts of things you need to look. I'm telling you, there's not a lot, which is why freeze-dried and dehydrated diets do hit all of those markers, which is why I would steer you that direction. So if you choose to move to one of those kibbles, if you can find one, then it's a very slow integration. You cannot do it in a week. You cannot do an abrupt switch. Your puppy has never had kibble in their gut. Their gut is not geared to digesting kibble. And if you give it to them, you could kill them. And I'm not gonna lie about this. This is fact. You give this to a puppy, an adult probably won't kill them, just really make them sick for a while. A puppy, when they have a developing immune system, if you went home from my house and went, we're not doing raw at all, and went and put them on kibble tomorrow, your dog's gonna violently start vomiting, violently start having diarrhea, gonna become dehydrated, and could die. And that's the sad truth. It is that much of a difference. And so if you are going to switch to kibble, it has to be done very slowly over 3 to 4 weeks minimum. And so you are going to have to feed raw for a while. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. So you're gonna have to at least give it a little bit of a try and make your decisions from there. So what you're gonna do is remove, when you start to integrate, you're gonna remove 1/8 of the amount of raw they feed and add 1/8 of the amount of the recommended kibble. You're gonna mix that in. And then if and only if, 3 to 4 days later, their stools are nice and firm and formed, they're not vomiting, they don't have diarrhea, everything's good, you're going to take another 1/8 of their raw away and add 1/8 of kibble. You're going to keep doing that over and over till eventually they're fully on the kibble. It's going to take you 3 to 4 weeks, and it's going to take a while. So you really have to move slowly to allow their gut to adjust and adapt to the kibble diet, okay? And I just really recommend you be very, very cautious with that, okay? You need to do the same thing. If you have an adult dog and you're switching, you do need to do the same thing. I have had people who were convinced by their vet after 2 years that they needed to switch to kibble, and their vet said just do an abrupt switch, and the dog got violently ill for 2 months. And they called me up crying. They're like, we don't know what to do. She's had diarrhea and vomiting for 2 months and we can't stop it. I said, well, what's changed? And they said, we've put her on kibble. I said, well, how did you do that? And they're like, no, we just gave it the next day. That's what the vet told us to do. Vets are not good with nutrition. We talked about this. So I said, okay, you need to put her back on the raw. And she put her back on the raw. And the next day, everything had resolved. So it was because she didn't do a slow integration and she didn't really want to move off the raw. Her vet was just very anti-raw and had talked her into it, and it was disastrous for her. So it does need to be done very carefully for that reason. When to call the vet. So I did talk a little bit about stress. Stress does significantly affect their immune system. So it is not uncommon for a puppy when they head home to get softer stools. That is stress induced. Anything up to a cow patty is considered okay. If your puppy gets soft stools, you can increase their probiotic intake by 2, 3, or 4 times the daily recommended, just to help strengthen their gut and soothe it a bit. And then also add pure canned pumpkin puree. Now, I really want to stress this. It's pure pumpkin puree, not the pumpkin pie filling, which is right next to it in the baking aisle in the grocery store. That will have the opposite effect. All that sugar in it will cause violent diarrhea and make matters worse. But pumpkin is the perfect fiber for dogs. It not only helps with diarrhea, it helps with constipation, and not just in puppies. This is a great thing to have for your adult dogs too. If you have a kibble-fed dog or a friend who has a kibble-fed dog and they have chronic anal gland issues, adding some pumpkin to their diet usually solves that, believe it or not, because it firms up their poops more. So that if they're getting softer stools, mix about a tablespoon in their food, mix it thoroughly, don't plop it on top. It has to be integrated into their food. And you're gonna do that every meal for at least, wait until the stools get nice and firm, and I would continue with that for about a week, 3 days to a week, depending on how their stools are looking. If they're looking really formed and really healthy, after 3 days, you can slowly wean them off the pumpkin and they should be fine. If they're still quite soft, just keep going until they, with the probiotics in the pumpkin, until they firm right up for a few days, and then you can start weaning them off. Most of my puppies don't have any issues with this heading home. I do recommend you take a stool sample into your vet when you go. Just to double check for parasites. I also do that before they head home, but it's better to double check. In some cases, when puppies are stressed, they may stop drinking. And if they stop drinking, they could become dehydrated, and symptoms of that are them sleeping a lot, being lethargic. So if your puppy is, you take your puppy home and you notice like they're not drinking much. So start off, raw fed dogs only really go to the water dish like 1 to 3 times a day at max, and they don't gorge themselves on water. They do a few laps and they walk away. That is normal. As long as you've seen your puppy go to the water dish at some point during the day, we're all good. But if they haven't gone at all, and they're sleeping a lot, then you need to get them to the vet. They may need some sub-Q fluids, which will bounce them back up like that. Within 20 minutes, they'll be a raging ball of fur again, and they'll be all bouncy and excitable again. So that is important to note. It's really important that if your puppy is looking lethargic, that you don't wait. Dehydration can kill a puppy in less than 24 hours. Believe it or not. I know everybody's like, oh, what? Shocking. Yes, it is shocking because, especially if they have vomiting and diarrhea with it as well, it's going to super dehydrate them, and it happens very quickly. So if your puppy is not drinking or is drinking small amounts or has diarrhea and vomiting, more than once, like that you've seen a few barfs and you need to get them to the vet immediately, okay? It's not a wait and see. Do not, with a young puppy, if it's like the evening, be like, oh, they just don't seem them perky selves, they've been sleeping a lot, they seem okay right now. If they're still not feeling great in the morning, I'm gonna take them to the vet. The very true reality to that is they could be dead by morning, because when they crash hard and they crash fast. If this is an adult dog, you could probably get away with that. But with a puppy, it goes so fast. So if your puppy is sleeping for extended periods of time, so it's normal for a puppy to sleep a lot during the day, but it's not normal for a puppy to sleep for long extended periods. So normally they'll sleep for like 30 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then they'll get up and play for a good half hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours, and it's back and forth, back and forth like that. If they're sleeping during the day, like 4-6 hours consecutively during the day, that is cause for alarm. Something's not right, and you need to get that puppy to the vet immediately. All right. We want from there those can all be signs of stress, but there's also the risk with puppies is our biggest concern when you're taking your puppy home is keeping them healthy, and the biggest puppy killer there is today is parvovirus. Parvovirus is a flu bug. canine parvovirus specifically, the symptoms of it are vomiting and diarrhea, which is the most common way for a puppy or dog to die of parvo is dehydration. That parvo itself doesn't really kill them. The symptoms of parvo from the dehydration is what kills them. So if your puppy has it coming out both ends, you just go, don't wait, just go to the vet, okay? Symptoms of parvo are watery diarrhea and vomiting. Usually, often there's mucus and blood involved in that. Often when they poop, they are moaning and whining because parvo, the way it does, it actually strips the gut lining from the stomach all the way through the digestive tract. So it's extremely inflamed. It removes a whole layer. And so it's very painful for the puppies. And then they have chronic diarrhea and vomiting on top of that. So it's just scorching their insides. So it's very painful. They're not feeling well. Those are generally the symptoms, okay? After they've had a few rounds of vomiting and diarrhea, they become very lethargic. And that's where your real risk window is. And the reason why I tell you is because I don't want to scare you that a puppy can die that quickly, but I cannot be held responsible if your puppy passes because you didn't receive veterinary assistance early on. So I'm giving you the signs so that you can get the most immediate care for your puppy if this situation was to arise. Pray to God, hope to God, it doesn't. But you need to get a puppy. A parvo puppy has to be in immediately, and then they'll be in 24-hour surveillance at your vet, so they can hook up IV lines to keep them hydrated, and hopefully they'll pass, right? And hopefully the amount of fluids they can get in them, they can keep up with the amount they're losing. It's tricky. It's a dance battle. So just be aware, parvo has an 80% mortality rate in puppies. Since COVID hit, parvo has exploded. There wasn't enough vets to go around. Therefore, it left a lot of unvaccinated puppies. A lot of people were getting puppies from puppy mills because they were just desperate. They didn't care anymore where it came from. They just wanted a puppy. So what happened was we had all these dogs that were sick. They weren't seeking veterinary care. Puppy parents didn't know the signs, didn't know the symptoms, didn't really know they had parvo, and were not taking proper precautions. You cannot go out and about with a parvo puppy. It spreads rapidly and you will spread it all around the neighborhood. And so it's extremely contagious. So parvo is spread in the feces. It can come out in their vomit as well. But after they've had parvo, they can spread it in their feces for weeks after they're no longer symptomatic. So that's a danger in itself. But parvo lives in the environment for 12 months. It's a stubborn virus. Freezing and heat does not kill it. So it'll live all the way through the winter. Even if it's 35 degrees outside, it's not going to kill it. So if you had somebody in your neighborhood who had a parvo puppy and had pooped on the sidewalk, and your dog walked through it and then licked their paws, congratulations, that's how they got parvo. And that is the very real reality. Your puppy is not fully protected until it's finished its vaccines. A little scary, right? But I want to stress this. Proper socialization needs to happen between 8 to 12 weeks, the intro. At that age, their brains are like a sponge, and they're very influenced by their environment for good and bad. So at that age, you need to give them as many positive experiences as you possibly can. Negative ones will also impact them. So you really want to be selective and try to minimize the potential for negative reactions because they can leave a lasting impact for their life as well. You keep going with the socialization, but those 8 to 12 weeks is really the most influential time for your puppy. Your puppy is not done its vaccines by then. But most vets feel that by the time they've had their second vaccine, that if we're talking about so there's two vaccines. I'm going to start there. There's two vaccines. There's DHPP, which is a 1-year vaccine, and there's 3 needles that are involved with that before they are fully protective. And then rabies is always done regardless after 16 weeks, okay? I'm not so concerned about rabies. The risk factor is very low if you have a pet and it's living in the house with you, okay? But the actual boosters are what's going to protect them from potential life-threatening viruses and diseases. So anyway, so DHPP, you're going to want to wait until after the second needle. So the first one's given around 6 or 7 weeks, and then they're given every 3 to 4 weeks apart, right? If you wait until they're all done, you're outside of the window, and that's not going to benefit anything. So with the DAP, which is the newer vaccine, and it's what a lot of breeders are giving out. It really depends on when my puppies are going home, which vaccine I give. I do not vaccinate them the day before they go out the door. That's too much stress, because when you vaccinate them, it puts stress on their immune system. So I like at least 3 or 4 days before, if not a week, to allow their immune system to build up after a vaccine. So if they're going home closer to 9 weeks, they will get DAP, which cannot be given until 8 weeks of age. DAP is a 3-year vaccine and is a series of 2. So the good news is when they go home later, the one vaccine is protecting them better than the one vaccine if we had done DHPP. The reason for that being is mom's immunities passed on through the milk are still, the likelihood of the first vaccine we gave them with DHPP taking effect is much lower, because the natural immunities that mom gives her pups that protect them interfere with the vaccine's immunities taking hold. So there's a window between the last vaccination and when mom's immunities wear off, and it's usually about 1 or 2 weeks, and that is really the window where your puppy could pick up parvo because they're completely unprotected. So with DAP, you can hit the ground running. Just give them that first week to really settle in, and then start taking them places. Start socializing them. It's really important that you start socializing them. And when I say socialization, a lot of people make this mistake. They think because they're good with their neighbors' dogs or their family's dogs that come over, that is adequate socialization. That is not socialization. Those dogs become a part of your pack and they will accept them. But when you take them out and about, they could be very aggressive or fearful with other dogs. And the reason for that being is because you have not properly socialized your dog. Socialization early on is introducing them to different people's sights and smells and sounds that they do not see on a regular basis. So meeting strange dogs, meeting strange people, taking them to places they've never been before. Those are all things that are going to desensitize your pup for life so that they're well balanced for life. So when you go to functions with your dog, you know your dog is not going to be the issue because they're not going to be reactive because you did your due diligence early on to ensure that they were not, okay? Just be aware when you're introducing dogs and people, just verify that the dogs are friendly. A dog, I see this a lot when a dog owner be like, oh, okay, it's okay. Can my dog say hi? They're friendly. It's okay. And then the dog comes up to your dog and it's very stiff and it has a ridge of hair down its back and its tail is kind of like this. And they're like, oh yeah, they're just so excited. No. That dog is apprehensive, nervous, and that dog is not sending good vibes towards your dog. That dog is actually not friendly. That dog is either fearful or aggressive. And 90% of aggression is based in fear, but that dog is not comfortable with the scenario that's going on, and the owner is not aware of the body language of the dog to understand that dog is uncomfortable with the situation. It could result in your dog getting hurt, attacked, or even just creating nervous vibes. That is going to influence your pup in those first few weeks. So if the dog is not 100% loosely, like, I guess the best example would be a happy golden retriever bouncing, and he's got his tail wagging and he's just That's the kind of dog you want to socialize your puppy with. One that looks very soft and inviting and is very eager to meet your puppy with, a very loose, relaxed body language, with tail wagging. Anything stiff, not good. It's not good, and you shouldn't associate with those dogs, because it could leave bad vibes with your puppy, and it wouldn't be good. So yes, really socialize outside of your immediate group of dogs and people that your puppy would normally see. That's really, really important. As far as puppy classes, I know there'll be several of you out here. This is not your first rodeo, and I get that. But as much as puppy classes teach you how to train your dog, they also give an opportunity for your puppy to meet different people, different sizes, different temperaments, different ethnicities, and same within the dog world. Different sizes of dogs, different breeds, different energies, and it's a great opportunity for your puppy to socialize in a safe environment. I strongly recommend that you do the initial puppy class, which give you basic obedience, and then follow with a more advanced puppy class. Because the initial puppy class is only going to give you the sit, come, stay, and then the other one's going to give you more advanced recall and walking nicely on a heel. Things where you're going to challenge the dog with not grabbing things off the ground like food. Those sorts of more advanced things, which are all skills that you're going to really want your dog to have, because they are helpful. You don't want to be walking in the park and your dog's grabbing something and you go to get it. It's like, having the skill to tell them to leave it or drop it when you tell them to is a very important skill to have. Recently, just be aware, since cannabis has become legal in Canada, there has been many cases of dogs overdosing on cannabis because people dropped bud in the park and the owner didn't realize that they had eaten that. So just be aware of that. A small amount is going to make them twitch and be dopey, but if they ate an entire bud, that could kill them. So dogs can handle they can't handle THC. That's the problem. Okay, they can handle CBD. CBD is very beneficial to them, and it helps a lot of dogs with stress and anxiety or joint pain. It's great for that. But THC specifically is toxic and can kill them. So they cannot have that, and you need to be aware of that and be consciously aware that people in public settings are not so courteous with where they choose to dispose of this stuff. So just be aware of that and always be on the alert and the lookout. I just want to touch a little further on parvo. The fact that it is extremely contagious. So until your puppy has done all its vaccines, please don't take them to hotbed spots. So when you take your puppy home, do not stop at a Tim Hortons or a public rest stop or anything like that. Anywhere where you would normally take a pit stop, everybody else also takes a pit stop with their dog. So that's a high risk area. Dog parks, public parks, like off-leash dog parks or on-leash dog parks, either or, beaches, grooming salons, and yes, veterinary clinics, folks, because people take their animals to the vet because they're sick a lot. So when you take your puppy to the vet, make sure you carry them. Double check with the vet tech or the vet that has escorted you into the room that the table has been sanitized, and then put your puppy down. Do not allow them to walk around on the floor until their vaccines are complete. Same with the grooming salons. It's a hotbed for kennel cough and other diseases. So make sure they're fully vaccinated. But as soon as they're fully vaccinated, when it comes to grooming salons, you need to get them in there right away so that they can start having good experiences with grooming. The younger you start them, the more it will be enjoyable for them for life. And your groomer will thank you, because nobody likes an adult dog. It's so much harder to to introduce an adult dog to grooming than a puppy. They almost always fight no matter what their age is because it's loud and it can be scary. The dryers are loud, the buzzers kind of tickle and they're loud and they vibrate. And what we have to teach them is that these things aren't going to harm them. So when we put the dryer on, we do it in as least invasive way as we can, but they do need to have it on them. And it's far more easy to comfort and hold a puppy than a 50-pound bunking bronco. So your groomer will thank you. I've definitely groomed a few standard poodles in my day that by the end, my arms were killing me and I was sore for days because I could not control the dog. They're so big, they're so strong because they had never been groomed before. And of course, normally when people bring them in at that age, they're completely matted. So it's not a positive experience at all on multiple angles. So the dog is not happy. It's in pain because of the matting. And then we have to do something that they're finding scary, which for their health needs to come off. And it's just a all around poor experience for everyone involved. And then your groomer really doesn't want to see that dog again. Also, because of the puppy boom during COVID, groomers have become very selective because everybody has a dog now. And so they are picking and choosing their clients. They only want to work on the easiest of clients. So if you have a difficult dog to be groomed, your groomer may tell you to go elsewhere. So if you start off early, build a good rapport, build positive affirmations with grooming. It's enjoyable for your dog, it's enjoyable for your groomer, and it's a pleasant, wonderful experience. And it keeps them healthy, and so it's really important. With your cockapoo, grooming should be done every 4 to 6 weeks if you like a teddy bear clip. If you just want it simple and not have to do a lot of brushing, when you do a teddy bear clip, you need to brush daily, every single day. That's not even a question. If you don't want to do a lot of brushing and you just want your dog comfortable, you do what's called a bikini clip or a strip, and you take them down real short to like 1/4 of an inch, and that'll last you about 3 months. And you need to repeat that every 3 months. So it's your choice what you want to do there and how you like your dog looking, but it does require maintenance. You can learn how to groom yourself, absolutely, but I do recommend that you take lessons because a lot of people think that they're brushing their dog thoroughly and they're not. And matting left on your dog is extremely painful, can cause skin conditions and infections, and it's really unenjoyable for your dog. And so if you really need to have a clear understanding on how to line brush and how to do that properly. And so demonstrations on how to do that correctly will help you tremendously. It's worth the investment. It 100% is worth the investment. Or just get the professional to do it and you don't have to learn. In closing, I just want to say we do offer lifetime breeder support. There are no stupid questions. I'd rather you ask and it be nothing than it to be something and you didn't ask, okay? I'm all pro learning. There's no stupid questions when you're eager to learn and when you want to know what's best for your animal. So please ask away, fire away. I'm here to support you, even when they're a puppy or, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road when they're an adult. I want to know what's going on with my dogs. Even if something happens to your dog, and you feel it's outside of the warranty, I still want to know what's going on, please, because I really want to know what's going on with my lines, within my lines. It makes me reassess my lines and what direction I need to go in the future. So I do appreciate the heads up. Even if it's outside of the warranty, please let me know because we might be able to work something out. It's just, I really want what's best for my dogs, and I really want them to be healthy for life, and I want my families to be happy and not burdened with sickly dogs and all the emotions that go with that and losing your dogs early. It's heartbreaking. I think anybody who's had a dog before knows the heartbreak, the inevitable heartbreak that happens at the end. and we really want to prolong that as long as possible. That's about it. Please, if enjoy your new puppy, and welcome your puppy home. We look forward to you having your dog for many, many years, and we look forward to updates. We always love updates. And we do try to post them on our website when we can, photos of our puppies. But we always love hearing back from them. We do have a chain on our Facebook page where people post their legacy pups. It's been up for a while. It's ever growing, and we absolutely love to show everybody off so everybody can see litter mates and siblings and parents. And it's a great thread we've got going, and our clients have really loved it. So I encourage you to participate. But other than that, congratulations on your new legacy puppy.